We are again. We keep saying this. We have since the middle of January, but again, it seems like, especially after the State of the Union last night, we are on the verge of possibly launching an air war against Iran. And there is an enormous amount of firepower that's in the region. We talked on a show earlier today about some of the possibilities of what the Iranian side may do and what the strategies may do. Well, I want to focus today on the air part of this and what the U.S. can do, what it can't do, and what the Iranian air defenses can do and can't do, and where their vulnerabilities may lie. And we have a really great opportunity today to have a new guest here, and he is with us now, John Waters, who is a Air Force combat vet, former F-16 pilot with nearly 200 combat missions, also host of the Afterburn podcast, which is really cool. John, welcome to the show. We're delighted to have you here.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
Plus, it's really cool. I like the whole dark vibe thing going on there with your side. That's really cool.
Very moody, right?
I wonder, just for our guests here, it's a good mood. Yeah. If you can kind of tell us a little bit about your background and what you've done.
Yeah, I spent about 13 and a half years on active duty and then into the reserves. In that time, I started off flying in the T6 and stayed doing that as a first-time instructor pilot, and then moved on to the F-16. Did my time at Shaw Air Force Base, flying Block 50s, doing the suppression of enemy air defense mission is kind of the bread and butter of the Block 50 F-16. And then after that one assignment, I had one deployment to Operation Inherent Resolve, supporting combat operations over there in the Middle East for that operation. Ended up becoming a demo pilot in the F-16, which is going around to air shows. And I did that for about 2.5 years before separating and go to active duty. So that's kind of highlights of my career. Definitely had a lot of great opportunities, met a lot of great people, and fortunate to have done it for sure.
And can you tell us, you got any cool stories from some of these combat missions that you had done? I mean, what did they entail, and did you ever have any close calls?
You know, I have a lot of buddies who've done some incredible work, and that's everyone has some cool stories. I definitely have memorable sorties that stand out. And just highlight again, people have done a lot cooler stuff than I have for sure. But starting out, my first assignment in F-16, I was showing up to Shaw Air Force Base in the spring of 2014, I guess. Yeah, 2014, because ISIS hadn't popped up on the map. We knew we were going to deploy. Coming up in the fall, summertime, ISIS, captures the world stage, and now we are going on a deployment. And we kicked it off before even Operation Inherent Resolve was a named operation. We were flying combat operations in Iraq and Syria. My first combat mission was a complete goat rope. It's the finding the tanker at night, tanking at night. But what was wild to me, I'd done a previous deployment in a King Air doing intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance in Afghanistan. And so I had some comparison of how these two were starting to look. So in Afghanistan, it felt like very lawyer, for lack of a better phrase at the time. You had to be a lawyer for dropping ordnance. We supported operations, and you would hear guys reading back 9 lines and confirming you're cut off, surrounded, no means of escape, yada yada yada. I mean, it was very high level to drop a bomb. My first combat sortie, go out there, and it's actually a data link message to smack a target. Which was just kind of wild of like how much it had changed in that short time period. But we were operating a lot of northern Syria around the town of Kobani. Again, at the time, our unit dropped the most precision-guided weapons of any F-16 unit in the history of F-16s. And then that record was subsequently beat by the unit that replaced us, and then the unit that replaced them. So really, really, really busy time. But I don't think I've had any close calls. I've had some emergencies with hydraulic failures and electrical failures. But the thing in the F-16, you only got one engine. And I've had some buddies who have had their motors cough or stop working. And so when I compare it to that, I haven't had anything that serious.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you didn't. That's one story that you don't really want to have. I don't have any Purple Hearts, and I'm glad about it. So
yeah, right. You and me both. I don't need that badge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, let's look at some of the situation we got in force could be radically different than what you've described, and what really what the United States has during a lot of that, especially the ISIS stuff here. because these guys on the ground can definitely shoot back. And so that's going to be one of the bigger concerns here. And I'm going to talk about what's almost certainly going to be the very first mission, tactical mission of this operation, which would be to suppress enemy air defenses, or SEAD, as it's often called. But let me just kind of ask you the big picture. Right now, at least what's reported, is there's somewhere between 200 250 total combat aircraft assigned for this this operation, or this potential operation anyway. Can you tell us the scale of that? Is that something that's as big as it sounds like? And what do you make of the likelihood of engagement?
It's massive. You know, it's been compared to Operation Iraqi Freedom and the buildup there. There are obviously, there's a little bit of apples and oranges that go with it, but this is a massive buildup if we look at the amount of iron that's moved into the region. We haven't seen something like this again since like Operation Iraqi Freedom. Operation Midnight Hammer, we did see a very big buildup as well. And we can talk about some of the logistics. I actually have a whole series I've been recording at Shaw with the pilots that flew Operation Midnight Hammer, the wild weasel aspect of it, and talking through the logistics and the hurdles they overcame for that operation was significant. Things that you don't really think about, or most people don't think about, but just, you got to get the fuel. You got to be able to buy the fuel. You got to be able to store the fuel. You got to be able to get the fuel from the fuel tanks into the planes. And when we're talking about this many planes, we're eating up a lot of gas. Operation Midnight Hammer, again, one surgical strike, they offloaded the most gas that they've offloaded in like the last 20 years since Operation Iraqi, in one night, right? So we look at this and we can dive into it. You know, my thought would be, this has the inklings based on what the red lines have been given, at least that what we can tell or surmise, that yep, the Air Force, the Navy, the Army, we could do a surgical strike like Midnight Hammer once again if we want to, absolutely. But to achieve the objectives that I think are being said, it feels like it's more of a sustained operation that's not going to be a matter of hours. It's going to be a matter of days, weeks, and months. Again, depending on what the objective is and when the flag goes up. So in order to do all those things, it's going to take a lot of gas, a lot of parts. So this is a massive buildup.
And what can you tell us about, based on the usage of fuel and the tankers and all that from Midnight Hammer, that basically a 2-hour operation? What can that tell us about what could happen here if what had happened? There's most of the sources I'm talking to say their expectation is, if the order is given, it's going to be a weeks, plural, long kind of operation. There have been some claims that we have enough resources for everything, ammunition, fuel, and all that stuff, for a couple of weeks of really high sustained operations. But do we? Because it sounds to me like the gas may be the really the fulcrum that everything else is going to have to pivot off of.
You know, I always look at those points, right? But there are a lot of smart people that I guarantee have obviously seen this problem set much sooner than I have seen it, right? Like, this is a known thing, not thinking I have a crystal ball seeing it. They're working these issues, but I mean, nonetheless, significant issues. And if we look at the order of battle and the laydown right now, parts and pieces are undoubtedly still going to be moving around, but all the geographically separated units that would be playing a part in all this, like, there's some significant ranges from going from base A, crossing the line into Iran, and then back to base A. And then if we talk base B, base C, I mean, these are not short hops and short sorties just in order to get to the area in order to get into Iran, right? I mean, you're talking potentially an hour and a half flight, if not longer, maybe sometimes shorter, just to get in there. So, I mean, it's going to be a lot of gas. And then if we talk ordnance, weapons, you know, who knows where that is? Anecdotal story, you know, Operation Inherent Resolve. I mean, there's a time when we took off, we had the last bombs on base. By the time we were landing, a C-130 was landing, because this is not something you just, you know, when we're talking GBU-54s, GBU-12s, GBU-38s, those are 500-pound class weapons and a variety of laser GPS or laser-guided GPS weapons. You know, we're not just buying these from the manufacturer and they're coming as is. Components are showing up to the base, and there are airmen who are putting these together. There's sailors that are putting these together on the ship. There's a lot of moving pieces, and I'm sure, you know, with your background, can attest, like, obviously the logistics train
Yeah.
Without the logistics, this thing falls apart really quickly. So we do have smart people that are working it, but it's a big problem set, I would think.
It it definitely is, and then sustaining that over time is gonna be a challenge that we really haven't been pressed because like you've pointed out, a lot of these missions we've done have been just kind of short, brief, hard, or in a relatively passive environment, and this won't be any of those. So I'm not sure we've been tested like this. We may discover all of it for ourselves as it's coming out. I wanna look at the first, real tactical challenge that, this operation, whatever it's gonna be, if it's gonna be whether it's regime change, destruction of their capacity to do nuclear weapons or the regime itself, the IRGC, all those things, whatever the targets are. I'm going to show you some of those in just a second. You're going to have seed first, I would imagine. Do you disagree with that?
I agree. I mean, I'd say cyber and space first, right? And then maybe some people on the ground working for us that are going to be disabling and doing stuff. Part of, seed could be if I don't get the operator to show up to work, because there was some guy who showed up in the middle of the night. I mean, that's still a win. Now, those are big moving pieces, but I think seed, the first in, last out. That is the motto of wild weasels who do the seed mission, right? Kick the door down.
What is Wild Weasel? You've mentioned that a couple of times. What is that?
So the wild weasel mission hails back to Vietnam, and this is when the Soviets gave the Vietnamese surface air missile systems, and we were having our aircraft shot out of the sky. So we had to come up with a solution. Again, a lot of smart people with a lot of bravery came up with a basic idea of, hey, let's go in there. Let's stir the hornet's nest, get everyone to look at us. We have some equipment on the plane now where we can try and identify these radar sites that are shooting at our guys. We'll identify them and we'll shoot back and destroy them. So a wild weasel, that legacy is carried on today. It's been done by the F-100, the F-105, the F-4, the F-16, and we're seeing a transition into the F-35 now. So the wild weasels are going to kick the door down. They're going to work with other assets. Like I mentioned, cyberspace. We have the F-35 and the E-18 Growler from the Navy and some other assets out there that are going to try to disrupt, degrade, destroy, or suppress the enemy air defenses so that everyone who has a striker mission, rescue mission, whatever it might be, they can get to their target area, their objective area, and get out safely. And then the wild weasels are going to close the door and leave.
And so, Gary, if you could put that air defense array missile, full screen up there. This is not that one. I'm sorry, the one we've been using several times to show the air defense sites in Iran. That one, yeah. Thank you. So these are what is claimed by some of the sources that we know of, where some of the air defense missile batteries probably are. There is reports that many of them are underground and wouldn't even come out until we've already passed, maybe thinking that we have taken some of these out. Can you just explain a little bit about the challenge that we would have with all this assembled firepower to take out that many air defense systems? Can we do that effectively?
It all depends on what the objective is and where, hey, is it only focusing objectives, meaning strikes in one specific area, or is it covering, are there strikes that have to occur in all these different areas? So that scale definitely is a factor in applying, well, how many resources do we have? Perspective wise, when we look at Operation Midnight Hammer and the number of F-16 wild weasels that were involved, it's a fraction of what we currently have deployed. We just had Massawa F-16s arrive in Diego Garcia yesterday or the day before. So we now have upwards of 30 F-16 wild weasels in theater. Again, this is like a significant order of magnitude more than what we had for Operation Midnight Hammer. Maybe that is an indicator of the scope of what this might be, or it is just defense in depth for sustained operations. Again, those are some assumptions, and we'll just have to see how that plays out. But when you see that threat laid out on that map, obviously it looks like a very dense integrated air defense network. What is actually there? Has it moved? What are the different capabilities of each one of those? Because every missile site has different capabilities, from range, ability to track and target shoot multiple aircraft. You have the terrain there as well. We've seen tactics, countries like North Korea, and some other places where these things can shoot scoot and move and do it again. Maybe they're hidden inside terrain features. So as you go flying over, and a day later there wasn't anything there yesterday, and now there is something that they can just drive out of a tunnel or wherever it might be.
Yeah.
It's problematic. I mean, and now we're talking about nothing very like double digit SAMs. How many of these things still exist after the 12-day war? Only, I guess, Iran knows, and probably some of our intelligence agencies have a pretty good idea. But if we just assume that they still have these double-digit SAMs, most of them, if we're talking S-300, S-400, very capable, modern, Russian-designed systems that are able to track multiple targets, shoot multiple targets, and shoot those targets multiple times. So,
yeah, and if you can, let's look at that S-300 first, because that's the one that's a little bit older technology, but it's apparently still capable. Can you explain to us from a pilot perspective, what are the capabilities of this, and how do you destroy these batteries without yourself being destroyed?
Yeah, great question. The problem set is definitely more difficult as these have gotten more advanced. I'll back up to what it used to be in Vietnam, and even some of the stuff that I was doing. I mean, not even a decade long ago, and just how fast the threat has changed. But typically, say it's you and I going out there. We'd be in a 4-ship, maybe an 8-ship or 2 4-ships, and our job is to go out there. We're probably escorting another strike package in, so we want to be out in the leading edge. I want those surface air missile sites to start turning on. Well, ideally they have been taken out beforehand, or cyberspace, but let's say they're still out there. When they turn on, now we're working to geolocate where these sites are. Different weaponry on the F-16 can do different things. The bread and butter of the SEED mission typically is the AGM-88, the HARM, the high-speed anti-radiation missile. This is a big missile. The F-16 carries 2 of them, and it can take sensors from the F-16, so sensors soaking up electrons, can see these enemy radar sites. You can transfer that to the HARM, or the HARM can see that as well. You shoot that HARM into that radar site. Now that HARM is going through a bunch of different math and science on the way to this radar site, and it's a big missile. And ideally, that radar stays emitting the entire time, and that HARM is going to go right into that radar site and take it out. There's obviously a lot of complexities that go into this. I mean, you're managing formations, you're managing geometry, you're hoping the radar stays on, but also there's more tools on the F-16. So you and I, again, we're in a 4-ship. We'll be split into an element. So we're driving in, and let's say this radar, this system can only track and shoot one, kind of more of a legacy system. So our other element, let's say they get illuminated and they're being shot at. They're going to be threat reacting and surviving. Meanwhile, now you and I, our job is to go out there and take this site out. So I can shoot a HARM into it. I can start using my targeting pod, that footage that everyone sees on TV of bombs going off and stuff. I can cue my targeting pod into that area, and now I can try and find it. Perfect world, the targeting pod just lands right on to this enemy surface air missile site, and there are going to be different components. There's going to be radar, there's going to be launchers. And now as an F-16 pilot, I'm slewing my targeting pod, trying to find the thing that I want to destroy. Do I want to destroy the missile launchers? Do I want to destroy the radar site that's accompanied with it? So now I can use a 500-pound, a 2,000-pound bomb, or multiples, and drop it in there to try and destroy it. Again, I mean, the whole mission set, like this is, takes years and decades to really hone this skill set. So there's a lot that goes into it. But now,
what about the defensive capabilities of the S-300 battery itself? Do they have any way? Because it almost sounds like they're defenseless, and all you have to do is get them to focus on one, and then the other, a 2 and 4 ship, whatever, then they can go in unhindered and just take the thing out. Is it not that simple?
Not that simple now. So 1, mobility, right? So these things can move. But 2, they can work together. So it's not just going to be one of these. It's not just going to be one radar and one missile launcher vehicle that's sitting together. They might be in the same region, separated by kilometers, miles, thousands of feet, in tree lines, hidden, etc. And they can work together. So maybe we're separated by a couple miles. I turn my radar on. I provide all the targeting data for another missile launcher that's shooting miles away. So now when I queue, I'm looking for, the emitting radar site, and then it turns off because another one picks it up and handles it, right? It's called cooperative blinking. So these things, they have ability, they have electronic attack protection. They have the ability to work coordinated together. You have the ability to move. So it is not completely defenseless. You got to get close enough to shoot it and destroy it. So these things have long ranges. Again, they can no longer just shoot one of us and target one of us. They can target all of us and all of our buddies.
Oh,
So it makes it pretty challenging.
and so now that sounds like it's going to be not like a 1 or 2 hour problem, that we're going to go in and get rid of all the air defenses, and then we're going to come in and it's going to have a free path to get into attack some of the other targets here. Gary, if you can pull a couple of those other ones, the targeting ones in. First of all, some of the nuclear sites, these are some here that are spread throughout, because apparently that's part of the target set. So you see those are a number of places, and you, based on where I showed you, the air defense perimeters seem to be in the forward edges along the border. Those are deeper in. There's also the one for the regime targets, and that's also some of the oil infrastructure, et cetera, that is used by the regime infrastructure. So you see some of those are around the Gulf, so those are closer to the shore. But then you have the ones around Tehran, which are obviously quite a distance back. And then the last targeting area, Gary, if you could put that third one up there, the military themselves, whether it's IRGC or some other organizations, and because one of the targets apparently is going to be that they want to get rid of the security apparatus that would prevent protesters from rising up and potentially putting the regime at risk, and those would go on. But you see, those are a lot of targets deep in the country. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you've got to, for some of these, you have to actually be over Iranian territory to be able to engage. Is that correct?
I mean, when you just look at that map, we could pull up we could do a distance here, but I'm going to say from the border of Iraq to Tehran. I don't know if you happen to have that.
Yes, I do, actually.
What that distance is, because I think I got it. So if let's just, I mean, hypothetically, from Baghdad to Tehran, that's 377 nautical miles. And then, again, if we'll do from the Mediterranean.
Yeah. It's 412 on this one as a crow flies. But you see there's, that's from Baghdad to Tehran there, et cetera.
Yeah. That's not an insignificant distance, right? And that's not, obviously we're not starting in Baghdad. So a lot of depth when it comes to that. And again, it depends on, what is the objective? What are the objectives? I've talked a lot about like the F-16, kind of the kinetic piece of this. The component, the F-35 is a very capable platform, and it's electronic attack ability coupled with F-16's ability to bring that kinetic seed, working together with Growlers and other EW platforms, is how this comes together, in my opinion.
And listen, we're looking at a close-up here of Tehran specifically here, but one would imagine that whatever the targets inside here, especially with the regime targets, in these mountains that are around here, that there's probably, correct me if I'm wrong also, but this is where you might get some of the air defense missiles, which would be in some of these crevices and some of this terrain, which would be harder to get at, would it not?
I mean, it would. They got to be able to see you to shoot at you. So, at some point they do need a certain amount of line of sight, right? But the terrain there definitely is, I would say, advantageous for defensive capability, more problematic for offensive capability. Not unsolvable, but again, there's some hills in and around Tehran for sure.
Right. So I guess, let's say that you're the air commander of this operation here. So you have to do the seed first, but then you also have to hit these other targets. How time consuming and asset consuming is it to get the seed, but then also have enough of it, or have the confidence that you've got enough of it that you can then, I'm assuming, and actually, so correct me if I'm wrong, that you would have other types of aircraft come in behind the Wild Weasels and all those that are doing that seed job to strike some of those targets, whether it's nuclear regime related, etc. But they have to have some confidence that the path is clear to get to the target, don't they?
Yep. I mean, that's the whole thing for the wild weasel, right? Clearing the path. Also, the air dominance piece of this and the Raptor, having the Raptor there to make sure. I mean, the Iranians, I've seen people scoff their Air Force. And again, I mean, it's not like going against a near peer threat, but they still have air assets that could do something. So you can't completely scoff it. The F-22 also can play a little bit of role in the seed aspect when it comes to the low observability piece of it. But like you've alluded to, if we're just going to push in along a path, we want to make sure that path is clear. And it's going to take, if it's multiple waves, well, again, we have a lot of F-16 Block 50s and Block 52s that have shown up in theater. So maybe that is to have a sustained clear path for quite a while, because fuel is a limiting factor. Operation Midnight Hammer and those type strikes, if we look at like Esfahan, again, just rough math, it's about the same distance, just further south inside Iran. Gas is a limiting factor when it comes to these fighters being at tactical speeds. So you have maneuverability in the case you are threatened, that you can threat react, as well as, limiting your time in country. You're burning a lot of gas. So you can't loiter and hang out once you get to the target area, at least initially.
Right here, by the way.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, that's still a decent distance inside Iran. Again, just using it as
where would they be coming from?
What's that?
Where potentially would some of these strikes come from, to see the distance from Isfahan to where?
So, I mean, if we just look at our laydown, we know for a fact, open source, right? We have fighters in Jordan. We have fighters in Israel, outside Crete, Kuwait, UAE. So all these things really haven't changed. I don't want to get too far into it, but
that's fine. But let's just say Kuwait, because that's kind of the closest one. Kuwait to Isfahan is 346 miles straight line distance there from that location. So how challenging is that? Would then you have to get the seed operations? Would you just focus on these down here if that was your target, to try to clear a path here, as opposed to all of those that I just showed that were all along the border, so that they would it be I guess limited to where you were going to try to get this Isfahan?
So again, like, what's the objective? What's the target in this case? And probably working way back. The path of least resistance, I would definitely think, is a factor when it comes to the mission planners who are doing this, right? If I have an area that I can deny their surface-to-air missile systems, their integrated air defense systems, and get people in with the least amount of effort possible, yeah, absolutely, that's what I'd be looking at. But they will be looking at too, right? Sometimes you're doing trade-offs on where you can go and what you can, where you need to go, how you get there, and it could be the threat laydown, it could be fuel, it could be timing, all those things. The planners are weighing those, the objective, the risk, and how they most effectively achieve the commander's intent with the lowest risk possible. Obviously, this is high risk, but you do have tankers, right? So you can expect that as all these fighters and bombers would, if they potentially move this way, they're going to be getting topped off. But we also we have to protect the tankers, right? Like, you want to get them as close as you can, so you can get as much gas as possible to go in, and then also be able to get gas when you leave. But those guys,
well, that's actually my next question, because you mentioned a couple of times now gas being a limiting factor here, and we've already seen that apparently somewhere around half of the tanker fleet that we have has been deployed here. So that means a lot of assets here. But how vulnerable are they, and where would they, let's say, whether it's the Kuwait or Baghdad or Jordan that was going to be launching for any of these targets in here, where would the refueling be able to take place?
So again, they're going to be looking at all that. I mean, Iran does have, again, double-digit surface-to-air missile systems. If they could reach out and touch a tanker with a surface-to-air missile, they would absolutely love to do that. So they're going to be looking at all the planners as far as how far out can Iran reach out and touch us, and then put the tankers, as close and as safely as possible. But you're not going to be up hugging the border with a big piece of metal like a tanker, at least in the beginning for sure. So all these fighters, all these bombers that are getting their last top offs are going to have to drive probably at least a little ways in order to cross the line, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it
But
does. Yeah, this seems like a pretty difficult and time-consuming operation here, and logistically expensive, if I can use that term, to get a lot of this done. This does not look like, and we're talking about the countrywide deal. This doesn't look like something that's going to be a short deal to knock all these targets out.
like I wouldn't think so. And again, it kind of goes back to, I mean, what I've been asking is like, what's the objective, right? I mean, is it a no nuclear Iran? Is it no proxies? Stop, pressing the Iranian people. No ballistic missiles. If you're trying to achieve all those objectives, I mean, air power alone is probably pretty challenging. I don't think we have a great track record when it comes to that. But the Iranians have time. They've had time to prepare, rebuild, recoup, fortify their defenses. And again, I don't know what they're thinking, but if I was in their shoes, I would feel like I'm backed into the corner. So I'm gonna be doing anything and everything I can to protect myself. And then, man, if I was the Iranian regime, I would want to poke the U.S. in the eye. If I could hit a ship, if I could hit a high value asset base, like for them, that's a huge win, right?
And Gary, if you could put that the missile range graphic back up there again. This one is concerning to me because you see the lot of the red plane icons in there is some of the places where we have planes in the area, and those are within a lot of the ranges of the Iranian missiles, especially if they have a number of these mobile launchers, which we were showing some video of earlier, in addition to fixed sites. It seems like reasonable that when an air war starts, that they would start attacking those bases and making it difficult for planes to get off the ground. How much challenge do we have with that? How much concern do you have?
Well, and to draw a line between like S-400, S-300, those are doing surface to air missiles, taking out planes. Like that's their objective.
Right. Yeah, I'm talking about the ground, the offensive missiles.
And then the ballistic missile piece,
Yeah.
cruise missiles, and then, I mean, let's throw in drones, right? The kamikaze drones. Was it 2023 in Jordan? I might be missing, like, we had the U.S. soldiers who were killed by, proxy forces using drones. And we saw it happen with Ukraine and that operation inside Russia, deep inside Russia, hitting their strategic bomber bases with drones. Like I think and worry about that even. You have proxy forces scattered out the region.
Right.
You have all these assets. I mean, all it takes is for, a Connex box full of these drones to go out there and really hit hard.
Yeah, in fact, Gary, if you could pull that B-roll we have of the Kataib Hezbollah in Iraq, this is what they just released this video showing a lot of their drone capabilities inside tunnels, and we don't even know where those are inside of Iraq, which they could come out at a bad time. Then that's what they're claiming to do. So, what is the concern that we have on the bases where we have these aircraft to keep them from getting hit?
It was in the news about a week and a half ago, Whidbey Island Naval Air Station. And it was pretty vague in the press, probably rightfully so, but they had an unknown drone enter their airspace and they took it out. And then we saw it happen too in El Paso, right? Captured the news with the airspace being shut down for 10 days. So utilizing some technology to take it out. But again, I guarantee from a base defense standpoint, this has been a topic for quite a while as the United States is trying to figure out how to protect against this en masse, because it's absolutely a threat. And like you just pointed out, like, where is this tunnel? Maybe there's some intel people that know where this tunnel is and you can take it out. But again, I used the analogy the other day.
A long tunnel right there, man. That'd be hard to take out.
Right? I mean, and it's like you kick the hornet's nest, and you might be able to swat most of the hornets, but undoubtedly one or two are going to get through and sting you. Yeah, that's a lot. That great, and boom, Connex box, right?
Right. Yeah. So that's it. This just looks like it's a really difficult task to do. So again, putting yourself in the shoes of the offensive air commander, how much time would you need? And we'll just pick one category. Let's say the regime targets. Let's say that's what they want, so that the IRGC is not able to put down the protesters, or that the Ayatollah is not able to maybe knock him out or something. But if those are your targets right there, the primary ones, how can you get? How long would it take you with the assets that you see deployed, with the gas that you see that we have, with the number of missiles that we have, their air defense, etc.? How long do you think it would take to service these targets and take them out to an acceptable degree?
Man, that's a tough question. The standard fighter pilot answer is it depends. You got to know what's inside each one of those target sets. Obviously, the distance is a factor. The threat laydown is a factor. But assuming we took care of all that, which again, we've already kind of alluded how difficult that would be. I mean, I think it was like 12 or 13 different spots up there, all separated, hundreds of miles. And then if we just assume each one of those bullet points is a building, which I'm sure it's more. I mean, these are compounds, these are structures, timing, place, or the people there or not there. Is it a populated area? Like all these things come into factor if it comes to how to take this stuff out. And apples and oranges, right? But yeah, I alluded to, like, I flew a lot in northern Syria for Operation Inherent Resolve. Town called Kobani, when we showed up, all controlled by ISIS. Over that 6-month window, going block by block, supporting the YPJ and the YPG, just basically dropping bombs on ISIS, like building by building, block by block. And that was 6 months, right? And there was no civilians in the town. It was all ISIS controlled. This is a big problem set. I mean, I think it comes back to in order to achieve all those objectives, I believe this is sustained operations. And again, I say achieve those objectives, like the ones you just outlined, or again, if we're talking regime change and it requires us to wipe out all these targets, this is going to take quite a while. What we don't know, right, is maybe just one push is enough to have this thing topple. Like that would be maybe the best case scenario if it does happen. But
that's certainly what the likes of Lindsey Graham and Jack Keenan and stuff are saying. They're so weak now. All it takes is a little bit to push them over. But I mean, you looking at your example right there, you just said, I mean, ISIS, who was not even a state actor, I mean, they weren't easy to topple. I mean, they stuck around for a long time. It was quite a bit of time for us to knock that one in a very limited area here. And you're talking way bigger with now actually something to shoot back at you, whereas the ISIS guys couldn't. So this is a pretty tall task, I think.
I agree with you 100%. And I think too is, one, we don't have a great track record when it comes to making this stuff quick, right? The one exception being Operation Absolute Resolve, which I did not know we could do in and out and be done, and I assume everything stabilizes there, doing a regime change, right? Like that's one of the very few examples. Maybe Noriega is another one. But this is not Venezuela. I mean, Iran is a different country. It's a different culture, different set of people, different military. So, what we, and obviously the draw the comparison to Iraq, I don't know, it's probably not fair as well, but we obviously saw a lot of Iraqis were really happy with the U.S. showing up at first, and then it turned into insurgency and chaos for, next 20 years or so.
Yeah, it didn't go so well.
Yeah.
Real quick, I wonder if you can just kind of give us an assessment of what some of the major air capabilities we have, what they can do, and what their missions are. What's different about some of these? And I want to go down the list. We'll start with the F-35. What is it going to do here? And we're going to go F-35, 16, F-15, and then F-22.
Okay. So the F-35, obviously our newest, latest, and greatest 5th generation stealth platform, more of a multi-role capability. But this thing, it's taken all the lessons we've learned from the Raptor over the years. And, the F-35 did catch and still does catch some flack in the press. I've flown alongside the F-35 a handful of times doing long-range air-to-air type training engagements. And I'll say, as an F-16 pilot, when I had an F-35 in the formation, never more lethal. Their ability to see more and also share the information they're seeing to the other assets is tremendous. And that can't be overlooked. So F-35, very capable platform. And, it's only getting better by the day. We keep upgrading this, and that does have a couple hurdles in of itself, which we can skip over. But these guys are going to be out on the leading edge. They're going to be doing air to air. They're going to be assisting with suppression of enemy air defenses. They're going to kind of be doing a little bit of all. And we have a bunch of them that have landed in theater, not only sitting on the USS Abraham Lincoln, but from the U.S. Air Force F-35As that are in the region. And they're going to be doing a mix of different things. But again, that opening day, expect them to be handling some of the air picture and assisting and doing things with suppression of enemy air defenses. That is what I would envision they'll be doing in this role.
F-16.
So mix of variants of F-16s right now in theater. I've talked about the F-16 Block 50 and Block 52. That's the Wild Weasel doing that suppression of enemy air defense mission. They are going to be kicking the door down out there with F-35 and F-22, potentially to escort whoever needs to get wherever they need to get going, handling and assisting, taking out that enemy air defense network. You also have Block 40 F-16s, which are in theater. Those, again, slightly different role, more focused on the air to ground. However, they can do air to air as well. So again, multi-role fighter. Expect them to be doing a little bit of air to air assistance. That's probably not their primary role. And then potentially the latest and greatest with F-16 and the F-15E, the Strike Eagle, is incorporation of the AGR-20, which is the Advanced Precision Kill Weapon System. Those are laser guided rockets that we've seen in the last couple of years being brought online. I think one of the pictures is actually an operational test one. Flip through there. Bringing this AGR-20 online. So when we first saw the drones popping up as a big threat in Ukraine against Israel, and even most recently the F-35 that shot down the Iranian drone when the Abraham Lincoln showed up, most likely that was with an AIM-9, similar to that's an AIM-120 coming off that one there. That's a radar guided missile. The one they shot the drone, most likely an IR infrared guided missile. We don't know that for a fact, but one of the two. These are very expensive missiles. We don't have an endless supply of them. They're costing $500,000, $1 million ish.
Wow.
And you're slinging them at $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 drones. Obviously, if your enemy is able to put those drones up in mass, not a great thing, because an F-16, can carry 6 of them, but that's it. AGR-20, the rocket pod, you can load this out wall to wall in the F-16, F-15E, and those other F-16s potentially might have a mix of air-to-air missiles for long range fighters, if that becomes a thing, as well as those rocket pods to handle any counter unmanned aerial systems, counter UAS.
Got it. F-15.
So you're seeing the F-15E that is currently being deployed, and that's one in mass. So the F-15E multi-role fighter, predominantly air to ground, as well as the ability to do air to air as well. But I would imagine they carry a lot of gas, they carry a lot of bombs, they carry a lot of rockets, a lot of missiles. We saw the F-15E, a lot of them got some big awards back in 2024 for defending Israel during a massive aerial barrage of ballistic missiles and drones. So they say this is the largest aerial engagement since World War II. They were shooting air-to-air missiles, taking these out. Now they have rocket pods. So again, expect them to kind of be doing a mixed role. Right now, we haven't seen the F-15C, which is an air dominance fighter. And it's the light gray version of this, single seat. The F-15E is a 2-seat variant. It has a pilot and a weapons system officer in it. The F-15C, we haven't seen that deployed. That F-22 is its replacement, and that's doing the air dominance piece. At least that's what it looks like right now.
And then let's go right to there. The F-22. What is it going to do in this war here? Especially if there's not a lot of enemy air that's up in there, like the fighters from the Iranian side. What is it going to do?
So you can see it again. Obviously, air dominance is going to be its primary role, but we've seen the F-22 utilized in Syria. It's able to carry bombs, and with its low observable capability, you can weave this into taking out enemy air defenses, taking out high risk, high threat area targets, right? So maybe, you need to get downtown Tehran right away. And F-22 is capable, most likely, of doing that as well. So can't carry, a lot of bombs like a B-2 can, but it can do that. So if there's no air picture or anything for it to worry about, you might see it do that or a mix of that as well.
And let me ask you one of the lesser sexy questions, but from my experience in combat operations, logistics is almost more important than any of the stuff in the front. How about maintenance? I've heard lots of different stories about how many hours of maintenance you need per hour flown. What is, if you can characterize that across the board?
It's funny. I actually just when I was doing this Midnight Hammer podcast that I'm editing right now, I interviewed a lot of logistics and the maintainers that were tied to this, right? So that's always my question for the maintenance side, because maintenance makes the world happen. Like, I mean, you have to have the logistics to feed it, but at the end of the day, maintainers put these jets together, they keep them flying. And I think the number is it's always kind of a subjective feel, but you could figure for every hour you're flying, it's probably 8, 12 man hours that's going in to keep this jet flying. Let's assume it's coming back code 1, but you have a jet that comes back, no issues on it. It's got to be fueled. It's got to be rearmed. People have to build the bombs. There's going to be routine maintenance that has to happen, inspections that have to happen. Let's say one comes back and got a bad hydraulic pump or a bad generator, whatever it might be, maybe that jet's down for several days. So it takes a significant amount of effort to keep these complex jets flying. There's no doubt about that. So, yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah. So that I guess leads to the question of when you launch, when something launches from the beginning, like whatever the opening round is, I would imagine you could have something, maybe not everything in the air, but a large percentage of all these aircraft in the air, which would overwhelm the ability to detect them or so. But then if you're talking about a sustained operation, because as you just pointed out, even from your own experience with ISIS in there, you got to spend a lot of time on some specific areas here. And this is not something you can just knock this whole thing out in a short period of time. How much problem are you going to have sustaining this beyond the initial blow?
That's the thing, is like how long the sustainment, I guess, has to be. What we have seen in the stories, firsthand experience from when I was deployed, seeing how maintenance, how it's just a little bit different than when you're at home and training, right? Like everyone is a little bit more bought into the mission and making it happen. So it seems like all the jets are always ready to go. People just kind of get it and lean forward. So it seems to work a little bit better, especially in the beginning. And again, I echo the stories when doing this Midnight Hammer piece. I mean, all the jets are ready to go. And people they make it happen. They have stories like during the last couple of years where, these jets are landing and it's like Vietnam style days where, the jets are still running and everyone is working around the jet to refuel it, reload it, and launch the same pilot back off. Normally you're coming in, getting out of the jet's getting turned in a couple hours and going back up. So a testament to like the airmen from my experience, working, doing this stuff, and then hearing some of the recent stories, basically being athletes and making it happen. But you can only do that for so long. Like I don't think that is sustainable for days and weeks on end. And I was on Ward Carroll's channel. Ward's a backseater from the F-14 days. We talked about the Navy side of it, right? I have some buddies who are on the Gerald R. Ford right now. When they got where they're going, not super ecstatic and happy. They've been out there for quite a while. And then we're now seeing in the news, right, the issues they're having from the basics, right? Being able to use the bathroom. Like how
are these reports true? Is it really 80% of them are on?
I don't know if it's 80% of them, but it doesn't seem like it's good. But basic things like that. And logistics side, right? Like people, they got to be able to sleep. They got to be able to eat. They got to be able to go to the bathroom, like just the basic stuff you can. And in the Air Force, we got to have like our tent with our air conditioning, right? So, we can't sustain it too long.
Roger that.
Yeah. So without that, like, what is this?
Just the basics.
Just the basics. My Wi-Fi, just like the Army, right? So, those pieces, I think it's a big problem. And from the Navy side, I don't obviously come from that expertise, but just talking to Ward and Sal, they 2 carriers, you can surge their for a couple days, maybe a week, right? But in order to do that 24/7 operations, you're going to need more carriers sitting out there from the naval side of it. So, um,
Yeah.
yeah,
I've heard that before.
yeah.
Well, listen, we really appreciate you coming on today, and this has been profoundly valuable and informative. Really, really appreciate it. But final question I got, and it's an uncomfortable one, but it's I think stuff that our leaders need to soberly face if they haven't. But what is your estimate of what kind of losses might we incur here? I mean, the ideal is that we won't lose any. We didn't lose any midnight hammer, et cetera. But when we're talking a sustained situation and a much more intensive and intrusive one, it seems pretty likely you're going to get some level of casualties. Do you have any sense for what may happen?
I don't know what to expect as far as casualties. My assumption would be, again, if I'm Iran backed into the corner, I would think I would throw everything I have at it to try and survive and win and to defeat my enemy. Maybe I'm wrong in that sense, right? But it seems like it's a very big risk out there. Again, that was a question I asked the pilots that did Midnight Hammer. I was like, did you expect everyone to come home? And the very sobering answer was no. And I think that's a very real reality that this is not the uncontested and from the air side of it environment that we've transitioned out of that mentality, I think, in the Air Force. But for 20 years of the global war on terror, you're operating in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria for the most part without an air threat. This is different. And then, oh, by the way, something that I think is still relatively new to this, you have reduced the cost and the barrier of entry to have a strategic strike type weapon. And again, the Ukraine operation deep inside Russia, where they launched the drones outside the trucks, the Connex boxes, and were able to strike strategic bomber bases and their, I'm blanking on the name of their AWACS, their warning control plane.
Yeah. Yeah.
Guys could have, I mean, not to play on it, right? Like 3D printing these drones in their mom's basements. And again, that was like an expert covert operation, but that's a real threat that we all face. We face it in the United States, right? I mean, how much the land has been bought up around military bases by the Chinese, right? But not even, it doesn't have to be the Chinese, right? But like anyone can park a truck alongside the road. And we see it. I don't know if you saw it or not, but the chief of intel for Air Force Central Command, she was on the Mitchell Institute podcast and saying, you know, all these randos are posting all these movements of flight aware of all the planes, which is true. But like our enemy's always done that, right? Like the Vietnamese had spotters back in the day, World War II, the Japanese were spotting out. I mean, that information is always there. Just now the public can see it real time. And I mean, again, makes it a little bit easier for an adversary because they can just log on to FlightAware and see these aircraft movements and get an idea of what's happening. But again, there we go. Perfect one, right? So she's not wrong in the sense that it sucks from an OPSEC standpoint, but this is the reality of today. And we saw the F-22s landing at Lakenheath, and it's plane spotters, right? They hear the planes coming in, saw it on FlightAware, and then they're out there at night with obviously super nice cameras capturing F-22s landing at Lakenheath. So anyone and their brother can be sitting outside of a military base taking photos of aircraft movements, and that's what we're seeing all across social media. So the element of surprise, again, golf clap when it came to Operation Midnight Hammer and how they kind of handled the B-2 movement. So it didn't give away the element of surprise there, but, you know.
Yeah, probably not this time.
Yeah,
we've seen Chinese providing satellite imagery on open internet as well. Then who knows what they're doing behind the scenes. So, yeah, there's not going to be any element of surprise here, I don't think.
Yeah, that's a very great point. I mean, obviously, I think that information probably flowed to a certain degree for a while, but they're obviously sharing it all over social media as well. So,
oh boy,
yeah, it's a big problem set. This is not a walk in the park, I don't think.
Yeah, definitely not that. And I hope the president and all of his advisors are taking this into consideration. It would just be egregious to me to lose any American airplanes or fighter pilots or anybody on the ground to a war that we don't really need to fight to keep ourselves safe. I would much rather keep those on the defensive side. But that's beyond my pay grade. That's not what they're asking me, but that's what I hope happens. And we are incredibly grateful to having you come on today. And look, if you guys don't get enough, especially if you mentioned you got some other other shows coming out on Afterburn there, the Afterburn podcast, be sure and look that up. A lot of great stuff there. I was looking through that earlier today, and I'm going to go back and watch some of the stuff. So
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I enjoyed it.
My pleasure. And we appreciate you guys too. And also to let you know, at 3:00, get ready. Doug McGregor is going to be on live today at 3 p.m. Eastern time. And he's going to be talking about a lot of this from the strategic point of view. And you definitely don't want to miss that. Talk to you then. We'll see you on the Daniel Davis Deep Dive.